Hey everybody, my name is Scott Schertzen alongside Mr. Obi Spencer and of course Mr. JD Walker, and welcome to the Sports Den on Spanglish World Network, Zingo TV channel 249, 250. Kindly remember to download the Zingo TV app on the app stores of iOS and Android. When you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment because both apps are free, so you can't beat the price. One last thing, Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Gentlemen, welcome to the Sports Den, and welcome to a hot number of topics that we got today.
It's great to be here as always. Good to see you, JD. Looking forward to a plethora of sports and topics today.
Yes. First and foremost,
having a good day here.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good. We got we've switched gears a few times today, but we're good.
Yeah, we got this. Before the show, though, you were leading off with a story about attendance at a minor league game. I honestly, like I said, I have no ability to have any patience, so I managed to get this far. I'm really curious to see where the story goes. So, JD, why don't you walk through this story from the beginning, if you don't mind? Thanks.
Okay, so the Oakland A's are in the middle of what I call the full Rachel Phelps, just absolutely torn the team down to the studs. One of about 12 teams that are just not even bothering to compete at the Major League Baseball level and just throwing out whatever minor leaguers and cast-offs that they can. It really is like the plot of Major League, though, in this case, because the Oakland A's play in a decrepit stadium. The whole team is an absolute poop show, literally in this case, because sewage backups are a regular thing in that stadium. Now, there's a lot of selfish billionaire owners in sports that cry for new stadiums, despite having perfectly good ones. But the stadium in Oakland has been very bad for 20 years. I don't know how it hasn't been condemned. So, between bad product on the field, a terrible stadium experience, negotiations for a new stadium going absolutely nowhere, with the Oakland City Council being jerked around by Major League Baseball's territorial rules with the Giants, because they had a deal lined up in San Jose, but the Giants blocked it. So really they need to either figure out something in Oakland or probably go to Vegas. Vegas is the home of Oakland's AAA affiliate. Mm-hmm. They played Tacoma Sunday night, had an attendance of 6,153 people. Not bad for a minor league game.
Mm-hmm. But
guess what the attendance at A's Tampa at the Oakland Coliseum, whatever, let's call it Oakland Coliseum. It changes names every few years of whatever corporate sponsor. How many people you think were at the stadium last night?
Whatever number
in
you
Oakland
just
for
gave,
the allegedly
certainly going to be less. I can guarantee that.
Whatever number Scott just gave, plus one.
I didn't hear. What was that number,
Scott? Rules.
Yes.
What was that number, Scott? I didn't hear.
5,000, and he said 5,001.
Well, you're both over by a good amount. 2,488.
Wow.
2,488 people. Keep in mind, that's announced attendance, so butts and seats is probably fewer. I saw a picture of the game. It looked like the COVID games last year with no fans in the stadiums. We had to see at least somebody is still keeping up social distancing guidelines, because you have essentially an entire section to yourself in that game.
I saw a meme of that game, and it's a picture of a kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old, in the stadium, and you don't see anybody else. He's like in the aisle, and it said, "Don't worry, your father can see you. Nobody else is there."
Your father, you're in left field. Your father can see you. He's behind the catcher, behind the home plate. This was last night's game, you said?
Last night's game in Oakland, yes. This is an absolute embarrassment. I mean, there's many things to not like about baseball, and two things that were not issued or addressed at all with the lockout is the fact that half the teams aren't trying. Mm-hmm. And there's some and they have awful small market ownerships. The worst is the one in Oakland. The reason Moneyball has been a thing for as long as it has is because they've gone through a revolving door of owners, each one worse than the one before it. And just this is absolutely sad, and the city is and the fans are understandably fed up. I mean, this is even worse than the Reds team president, when confronted with the criticism in a live TV interview, essentially said something like, "Yeah, you have nowhere else to go. You're stuck with us." Paraphrasing, but basically just called out the fan. Fans were calling him out, and his response was, "Yeah, if you don't like us, we may just leave." So,
but that's the problem. I think with an increasing issue. I think across the board when it comes to dwindling attendance, bad numbers, or anything like that. The entertainment field in general is like the only industry that exists that can openly just bash the fans. You'll never see basically Microsoft come out and when they have a bad product, and they often do, they will never come out and say our users are stupid as hell, or they're pieces of crap or whatever it is. But in Hollywood and sports, it's like, if you're not coming out, it's your fault, not us.
So with Oakland, it's just the fans are actively boycotting. They have there was an active boycott by the fans because of the way the team's being run. And like I said many times, Houston was not really punished for their cheating scandal. Houston was punished, and I believe this wholeheartedly. The Yankees who spend money and the Dodgers who spend money went to Houston and said, "You made more money than us and you lost a bunch of games. You have to be punished for that." And they covered it up this way. I honestly believe that's what the other owners told them. Because you're right. This is unacceptable. When Philly was rebuilding, here I was, the Philadelphia 76ers. What they did to get fans into that stadium, like if you sneezed within a mile of somebody who worked there, they gave you 2 free tickets. Like, "Oh, you're breathing? Come to the game tonight. Please come in. Please show a fan." But baseball's not even trying to get people in for free to buy hot dogs. It is a little bit of a problem.
But even at the worst of the process, we're still getting 10,000 fans a game.
Yeah. Oh, no.
But here's the shame that comes to Oakland, because they lost the Raiders. Okay, fine. But Oakland is not that far gone from being a strong, competitive, exciting team. I mean, granted, it's low payroll, but when was the last time they were in the playoffs? What, 3 years ago? 2 years ago?
I think did they make it in the COVID season in 2020?
They might have, but I mean, they're not. It's not like one of those teams that's been so far gone that
not like the Mariners who haven't made the playoffs in 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. Same division too.
Yeah, but just Oakland 5 years ago had had 3 major league sports teams: the A's, the Warriors, and the Raiders. 2 of them are gone. A third is probably going to be gone within the next year or 2.
That's a shame too.
So is there anything, I can't think of anything like this in modern history where a city has lost all of their sports teams, as multiple, in such a short period of time.
And I just looked it up.
The A's moved because you have the A's. Raiders obviously moved to Vegas, but also the Warriors moved across the bay to a brand new arena in San Francisco.
And I'm looking at the record. I'm looking at the record here. They actually were in the wild card 2 years in a row, lost, and then in 2020 lost. They won the wild card, but lost the next round to the Houston Astros. So they made the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 years, and that's a shame.
I mean, the other thing is, look, we don't live in California, but I wonder about that area, the Bay Area, becoming, are we talking about now, again, we don't live there. It's not our neck of the woods. Would love to talk to somebody about this. Are we talking about teams leaving Oakland, or is San Francisco so much bigger? Is Oakland becoming like a Staten Island? Should it become one city with different boroughs? Like, I don't know enough about the area, but is that happening in that area in and of itself, that San Francisco is taking over Oakland entirely? Just when you hear stories about Oakland in general, you get that feeling that it's like in Manhattan and the Bronx, or, one of the bigger boroughs and a literal borough. And when it comes to ratings, they treat it as one area, right? It is one metropolitan area when it comes to television ratings.
We have that here pretty much too.
It's almost like it's more like Newark and versus New York City, where Newark is sizable city. If you took Newark and dropped it in the Midwest somewhere, it would be a major city. I believe it's essentially the same size as Indianapolis. I don't have the exact population numbers in front of me, but they'd probably be comparable. But since it's next to New York, nobody cares.
And that's usually indicative of New Jersey in general.
Right, exactly. But Newark being the biggest city in New Jersey and actually home to a professional sports team is the comparison in this particular case. Mm-hmm. The Oakland also they've had, the stadium situation is untenable, and every time that the A's have tried to build a new stadium, which they've tried multiple plans over the past 20 years, but most notably was they had one in San Jose, they had another one in Santa Clara, and the Giants, through their territorial rights, blocked all of those attempts. So the A's are uniquely hamstrung in that regard, which is a situation similar to the Mets and Yankees or the Cubs and White Sox, where you have two teams sharing the same market. So one can't do anything without the other signing off on it. And the Giants have basically been trolling the A's for decades to try and force them to move so they can have the entire territory to themselves.
Well, opening that question up here, I mean, if the A's do move, do they just go to Vegas and make that the easy answer? Or is it somewhere, where would they go?
Just with any team relocation, it's whoever throws the most money at them and is dumb enough to use hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money to build a stadium. I don't know if there's an appetite in Vegas to do this, or at least, there is a minor league stadium there, which I believe they could hypothetically renovate that up to major league levels, but I don't know what kind of money that would take in order to do that. They paid a pretty good sum in Vegas in public money to build the Legion Stadium where the Raiders play. So I don't know if this would happen again for a new baseball stadium. Especially as such deals are criticized more and more. The same thing essentially happened in San Diego, where public referendums for new Charger stadiums were voted down. And other issues with
look what happened
ownership standoffs off with the city. So it's basically a similar situation. What the Chargers went through in San Diego is what's happening with the A's now.
It's a shame for Oakland because it's been a team that's been there, a stalwart team since the 60s, I guess, since they moved from Kansas City. So you look at that team, you look at that legacy and the World Series championships. And like I said, 3 out of the last 4 years, they have been to the playoffs. They missed for a couple of years and then had playoff runs prior to that. So it's not like a team that's a perennial laughingstock. It's a team that has become a shell of its former self very, very quickly, perhaps faster than any other team has.
Yeah, and it's a franchise that has moved several times. Has been a bit of a vagabond, through over the past 100 years. Going back to their time.
Use words, by the way.
Yeah, and what they've won 8 or 9 World Series through their entire existence. So it's not like a team that has never won anything.
Well, it's got some great players on its historically. It's got David Stewart, Reggie Jackson, Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco,
Ricky Henderson 4 times.
Thank you. That was the last name I was looking for, Ricky Henderson, who I think is the most underrated baseball player of all time. And I think most people would still say he's in the top 50. And I think he's underrated. But
you had 3 straight World Series with the Catfish Hunter, Reggie Jackson, Oakland teams managed by Dick Williams in the 70s. They won 3 in a row. You had the Bash Brothers teams. Then their period in Kansas City between when they moved out of Philly. And yes, the A's were at one point in the early 20th century in Philly, and they were the better team in Philly for most of it, but they went so far down the tubes that the Phillies were like the Mets, where they were an afterthought in their own city. But as the A's declined, and the Phillies got better,
But you know what? To that note, this is a team that's moved 2 times already, so maybe they don't need to stay in Oakland. This is to use your word again, this is a vagabond team.
But it's been 50, 60 years since they've been in Oakland, like 50 or 60 years at this point.
Yeah,
I think it's 60 years. That's the
1968 was
60s
when
one.
they moved to, and 1968
But
was when they moved from Kansas City to Oakland.
in our
And
lifetimes, we've seen a lot of. I mean, I know there's the recents with the Raiders and Golden State, but the Raiders left before. In I think all three of our lifetimes, definitely even Scott. And
Bounce
I.
back and forth
It's like,
between places in California.
yeah, L.A., Oakland, and then back. So it's not. It is a city that I think it has trouble holding its sports teams, but I think it's because they do make the right call. They do understand the economics of building a stadium with public, and they're not willing. The people of Oakland aren't willing to take on expense time and time again. And they probably, again, I don't live there, but I wonder if there is a sense. Well, if we lose our Oakland teams, we just cross the Golden Gate and hello San Francisco teams. We'll take our Giants. We'll take the Golden State Warriors still. We have a baseball team and a football team. Oh, no. Let San Francisco pay. Let San Jose pay.
I don't really know.
So, Scott, obviously,
I do. What about this? Now, I don't know the area that well. So, south of Tijuana. Tijuana is like 20 miles or so from San Diego. They complain. But what if you opened up a Mexican team? It would still sit in the AL West, and Mexico would go crazy for it.
I believe that Padres would nix territorial rights, or I don't even know if territorial
You have to
rights.
go further south than TJ. I get that. But just as a thought, I mean, if you brought it down to someplace in Mexico that's, say, outside of San Diego's range, Mexico would go crazy for it. They'd love it.
I don't know if there would be fan support, but Mexico doesn't have the corporate support, luxury boxes and the like, and corporate sponsorships that would that I believe is essentially non-existent in Tijuana.
Yep.
No, and
producer message from Eduardo. It's been talked about, but Mexico wants the first team to be in this. Okay.
Yeah, I'd imagine Mexico
City
City would have to be first. But
I mean, I guess Mexico City could still qualify as AL West technically. Barely.
Yeah, but also with the high altitude, it would be an even bigger joke than Colorado.
So great for hitters, not so great for pitchers.
Right. So it would make it be, as far as quality of play, with the high altitude, which I believe Mexico City is even higher altitude than Denver, if I'm not mistaken. That's why the U.S. soccer team struggles so much in Estadio Azteca down there, because it is a brutal place to play if you're not used to those conditions.
Would Robbie Cano be a better hitter then?
He could get whatever PEDs he wants off the street corner outside the stadium.
Yeah, I was going to say, which PED do we go with here? Do we go with Robbie or do we go with DeAndre? Both were going to come up in conversation sometime today.
Yeah.
Yes, it looks like it's. It's 72. It's a mile and a half versus a mile. So, and I don't think Denver's a full mile.
All right. So it'd be a little like you saw what happened to Mike Hampton after he signed that big deal with Colorado. His numbers went down big time.
Every pitcher's numbers go down in Colorado.
Yes, he wanted to hit home runs, which is why he signed with Colorado. He signed there because he wanted to be a hitter.
No, didn't he say something about? He say some garbage about the Denver school district being better or something?
He did. That's why he left the Mets though, because he left the Mets. He's like, the school district is good in Colorado. It's like, no, my thing about Mike Hampton is I just don't think he was built mentally for New York. I don't think his personality vibed. He was a Houston guy. That smaller edge field in New York had him. His numbers in New York weren't bad, but they weren't phenomenal. I think he was looking for something a little more small market, and Colorado is like, here, have a giant bag of money. And he's like, all right, fine.
Yeah, but I mean, Mike Hampton got the Mets a pennant, and they were able to afford to sign, and the Mets were able to afford to sign him by using the Bobby Bonilla buyout and the annuity, that they thought they were getting great returns on, and setting up the infamous Bobby Bonilla annuity to free up the cash to sign Mike Hampton.
2 months away.
Mike Hampton helped them win a pennant, left in the offseason. The compensatory draft pick that they received for Mike Hampton's departure, the Mets used to pick David Wright. So
Interesting.
in a way, that crazy Bobby Bonilla annuity, as much of while it's become a punchline, it kind of sort of paid off for them.
I mean, we can talk about how much of it's a punchline, but in the annals of actual bad strategy, it's not. There's plenty of annuities. They're just not Bobby Bonilla. The real issue was bringing him back in the first place. Scott, what do you have to say about that?
But here's the thing on that. That's $1 million flat, right? That is not adjusted for inflation every year.
Right. That's $1 million.
It's a flat cost, I believe. It's $1.2 million, I believe, every July 1st.
But in this case, JD, if you remember your inflationary numbers back in the day, the inflation rate usually is about 3% every year. So over the course of 18 years, that $1 million kind of became about $500,000. So the team is actually paid less because cost of living went up.
But it was more than what they actually owed him. So I think they owed him $20 million. They're paying him $1 million a year.
They only owed him like $5.5 million.
Yeah, because they were getting money. They were getting that Madoff money.
Right, exactly. The whole thing was based on, we're getting 10%.
How'd that work out?
We can pay 7% and we're getting 10%, but the 10% was bogus because it was money from Bernie Madoff.
Right.
I actually, when I was a financial advisor, I had one situation much like Madoff too. It was this 50, 60-year-old doctor who dropped $750,000 on a guy who just fled to Brazil. He's like, I have no idea how to tell my wife about this. So, but irrespective, going off topic. But Mike Hampton, I just looked up the numbers. Mike Hampton did have the best ERA, not the best record that year, but the best ERA. But he gets a free pass because that was also the game. And I was at that game where the Mets came back in the 8th inning and beat the Braves, including the Mike Piazza home run. I was at that game. Mike Hampton gave up like 4 runs in the first inning because he would have games like that.
No, Hampton was a solid starter and helped him, and I believe he was NLCS MVP that year. So,
but I remember Al Leiter being like, we knew he was going to go. We knew he was 1 year. He just didn't feel he belonged here. So.
He just wasn't a New York guy, and a lot of them really aren't.
Yeah,
there's been many players like that just they can't handle New York. Most recently, Sonny Gray is a great example.
Oh God. They bet the farm on Sonny Gray. How did that work out? Whoopsie.
Yeah. It was basically Kenny Rogers 2.0, another one who was great elsewhere, but just was crap for both New York teams.
Twice, yeah.
And speaking of bad investments, happy trails, Robinson Cano.
Nice little segue on that one.
Robinson Cano, $40 million left on the ridiculous contract that he signed with originally with Seattle and was then traded to the Mets. Could not hit the Mendoza line coming back off of his second PED suspension. And with the rosters going from 28 down to 26 at the beginning, starting this week, the Mets had to make decisions on 2 players to get rid of. And when the option essentially came down to option Dominic Smith back down to the minors because he had options left, or finally bite the bullet and move on from Cano. Cohen.
It was an easy decision. It was
Cohen took, but it's an easy decision, but a decision that previous Mets ownership would never have done. They would have been more afraid of the Yankees or somebody else picking him up off the trash heap and potential embarrassment than the actual embarrassment of keeping him on the roster as a complete waste of space.
But see, here's the funny thing about this. Cohen comes out looking great because Cohen inherited Cano. He never got Cano. So by letting him walk, Cano actually, Steve Cohen looks good in this case because it's like, I let him walk. The fans are obviously like not really surprised here. It's a big contract. We understand all that. But he lets go of something. And it also shows that Cohen is willing to make the moves to help his team win, even if there's money involved. But I think, honestly, Steve Cohen looks great in all this.
Well, yeah. It also helps Steve Cohen. Sorry, go ahead, Obi.
Yeah, like I said, this was an easy decision from purely a baseball point. And I think then didn't Dominic Smith have a key role in winning 2 games since the Robbie Cano announcement? So it was an easy decision. As a Met fan, I'm happy. I'm sure you are too, JD.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the chatter I've seen was more surprised, like, what? The Mets did something that makes sense? This never happens. Wow, we really are in a new world. I mean, it definitely helps when you have an owner like Steve Cohen who has $40 million in his couch cushions.
But Cohen has done so much.
to
Cohen has shown so much about how badly he wants this team to win. The Lindor deal. You look at all the things that he's been doing all along. I mean, the Scherzer deal. You see this guy as being a more calm, collected George Steinbrenner. Wants to win, a little less psychotic.
Yeah. I mean, he's here. He's playing to win the games, which is exciting. No, it is. I mean, we just talked about 12 teams, give or take, that are not playing to win, that are in full rebuild mode, and don't even care basically about attendance if you're Oakland. So, I mean, that's a real problem for baseball. It's shocking that it's a bigger problem for baseball than it is for basketball, where the incentive is so huge because you get that guy next year. But it seems to be a bigger problem in baseball than basketball. JD has a counterpoint, obviously.
The reason it's a bigger problem in baseball than it is in the NBA is because of the income coming in. Baseball is stuck in locally sourced TV contracts that are going mostly through exclusive deals with regional sports networks, because baseball is a regional sport, not a national sport. So they are more heavily reliant than the NBA and the NHL on local TV deals. The problem is they're doing this right as just about everybody is cutting the cord. So the business model is falling apart, but they have these impenetrable contracts with Byzantine rights deals and exclusivity, where teams like Cincinnati, Kansas City, and they're not getting much money coming in. The owners are not as independently wealthy. I mean, yes, wealthy as far as billionaires go, but like they don't have Steve Cohen money to drop, which is why they tried desperately to keep Steve Cohen out of ownership, and did the forced marriage with Sandy Alderson in order to be able to take him. So since baseball is more reliant on local TV contracts than the NBA, they are stuck in these deals and don't have the money coming in, especially in small markets. But because of the exclusivity of these deals, they can't grow the game. They cannot do streaming deals very easily. They had the Field of Dreams game in Iowa last year. The area of Iowa is where they held the game is claimed as local territory by 6 teams. How can you grow your sport if, because of these idiotic TV contracts, people can't watch it? You know, the local, in many cases, the local RSN, Regional Sports Network, is not carried by the local deal. Think about how MSG was dropped from Comcast this year, as an example. But imagine not being able, the issues with the Dodgers in LA and their channel for a while. So you have the game. How do you get new people how do you get new customers if people can't access your product? And it's the big market teams, the Yankees, the Mets, Red Sox, Dodgers, they'll be fine. It really is an issue for these small market ownerships, and baseball is powerless to do it. So instead, you get this haves and have-nots system, and the same 5 teams winning every year. The evil empire is not just the Yankees anymore.
No, it's the Dodgers too, and even some would argue the Mets.
And the Red Sox.
And the Red Sox, yeah. But
And
see,
the
it's been
Braves.
that way for so many years anyway. Where you have the haves and the have-nots. The disparity has been around since. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say 2004, but definitely before that even.
Now, there's been a disparity in baseball forever because on the other hand is the salary cap issue. When you have a team of the value of the Yankees, right? When in the 80s, when they somehow didn't win, it wasn't from lack of trying. It wasn't from every individual who was good and them not grabbing Winfield. And basically they bought the Oakland A's championship team. It just didn't win for them. They got Winfield and Reggie and Henderson. And they grabbed everything they could. They just didn't happen to win. And that's why I always come back to it, though. the flip side is for baseball as a national sport, because it's so regional, you need the Yankees to be good. Because you need people to know that bad team or that good team, depending upon their view of the Yankees, is there, and the storylines are flowing. Yankees winning 10 in a row this week, huge for baseball, so exciting. And the way they're doing it, powering away, bombity, 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 bomb. I'm sure MLB front offices are ecstatic.
And also with baseball is a problem where all of their best players in the game today are all playing on garbage teams. Juan Soto with the Nationals, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani with the Angels, Harper and the Phillies.
I was going to say Bryce Harper and Philly.
You have the best players that are making all-star teams and winning all the awards are all on teams that stink.
I'm not sure that's so new, though. I mean, I give you Ralph Kiner. If you hit, when you try to get that new contract, that story.
Andre Dolan in the 80s as well. So there's always been one or two, but this many. You have San Diego with Hosmer and Machado. There's so many where they're all in all with bad teams. And the bigger issue in baseball isn't even salary cap. I think salary floor is the bigger issue. That's why you have teams like Oakland, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati that have essentially minor league teams and $20 million payrolls. I believe Ken Griffey Jr. with his form of the Bobby Bonilla annuity is the second highest paid Cincinnati Red this year behind Votto.
Wow. But see, that's an issue that baseball has no intention or desire to fully change.
Exactly, and they wonder why they're hemorrhaging fans.
Well, you said 24.88 the other day.
24.88, which for comparison, the small gym on campus of Seton Hall University, Walsh Gymnasium, holds 1,300 people. So this tiny bandbox gym, you can't even fill that gym twice with the number of people who were at the A's game last night.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
my kid's high school gym holds 1,500. So yes, I got you.
Right, exactly. It's a high school. A high school. You could fit that many people into a high school gym in New Jersey.
It's a shame, but I mean, honestly, like I said, my thing is that Oakland again is not that far away, and they just blew the team up, and now obviously the fans aren't coming out, but. I don't know what happens to the team. Do they go to, how I feel about this. I've been down this road and I know it's not going to happen. I've accepted that. But I'd love for like Wyoming or Montana or some bizarre location like that never gets anything outside of the occasional college.
There's nobody there.
Yeah. I know. That's why do you think
I prefaced people in those places? That's why they don't have teams.
Why do you think I prefaced with what I did, knowing the fact that I said full well, this is never going to happen? I understand that. But in my imaginary world where you can just drop a team in, EA Sports, whatever, I would love to see like Montana, Utah, Wyoming, or some bizarre place like that, North Dakota, whatever, get a baseball team because you know what? In my imagination, it happens.
It works in a national sport where there's national deals and the number of people in your facility don't matter. And it would be great. Like, imagine that, just an open, like we could go back to the Field of Dreams game. Like, all sorts of interesting ground rules here. Yeah, I mean, like it could be fantastic. I give you that. An empty stadium with guys playing whatever the sport is, because the sport is not reliant on ticket sales. But as long as it's relying on some amount of ticket sales, it's just not Ames, Iowa. There ain't enough people there. It's not.
But you know what it is? I've often wondered. I mean, we're in the New York, New Jersey area, in your case, Philadelphia for you guys. You get spoiled by the sheer number of teams that are here. But when you go to places like that, they don't have – I've always wondered how they felt about that because they never get the luxury.
That's why they like minor leagues in the local college.
Kind of so do we. But here's the thing. Okay, they got college sports, they got high school sports, but they don't have anything on like the major professional level, top 4, hell, top 5 level where they actually have the regular stuff. College is all they've got. So I've often wondered how they would feel and react if a baseball team was dropped in their neighborhood or an NFL team.
So I'm going to give you severe pushback on that because you say college is all they got.
Mhm.
Can I interest you in a Florida baseball team? A professional Florida baseball team? No. Why? Because I got SEC football to be worried about.
But we've talked about that. The reason Florida also suffers is the transplants bring their team. If a snowbird from New York heads down to Florida, they're not becoming a Marlins fan. They're staying a Yankee Mets fan.
So I've done some looking. I think that's overrated. There are areas of Florida that are certainly and totally about snowbirds. But Florida is a pretty big state that's been around for quite some time, and there are non-snowbirds there too. There are people who've been there for generations. We forget that. And they're not interested because they have their SEC football.
Well, also look at Atlanta. The Braves won a World Series and they barely drew flies during the regular season. They had a half full stadium during the regular season.
People from up here moved down there. So
yeah,
and the Miami Heat, they're known for the fact that they're wait to the second half. Granted, they say it's because there's so much to do in Miami. That may or may not be true, or it just may be.
It is.
We got other things to do. Well, we do have other things to do. It's just not basketball. So the Sixers were able to be up at halftime with their best player, non-existent on the road.
Like I said, when I create a team in Madden football, though, I always drop them in like Wyoming or North Dakota or something like that. It's just my thing.
Yeah, but college is huge in these places. Why do you think that SEC football schools, Alabama, places like Tuscaloosa, Gainesville, Oxford, Mississippi, those are the only things to do in those places, especially when the closest pro team is several hours away. Seton Hall played in the WNIT championship game at South Dakota State. That place was sold out for a women's NIT championship game. Over 5,000 people in the stands, and it was electric. So that's what you get in places that don't have pro teams. Is that a local college team or certain minor league teams are the ones that get the fan interest.
So in this case, what you're saying is obviously they gravitate towards it, A, because they have it, but B, if a major team came in there, hypothetically speaking, it would kill the college part of it.
I don't necessarily think so because back to the Florida and Georgia example. It's not like people stopped going to Gators and Seminoles games when the Bucks started in Tampa. There's the Bull and UGA attracts better than the Falcons in some years.
Yeah, I think just because we in the Northeast think of pro sports as the top of the ladder because we have access to such great diversity of options in the pro sport area does not mean that to everybody it is the top level of sports for viewing opportunities. And so therefore, just because you put a pro team into the area does not mean you're going to get people to change from their college team to the pro team if the schedules conflict.
There's also more of a personal connection with college teams. If you're
a graduate.
Yeah, like if you're a graduate or you have family that was a graduate of, you see even to a lesser extent, you see that with Penn State. With their followers, it's as far as I'm concerned, major D1 college programs of a rabid following that puts some pro teams to shame in some cases, especially in Big Ten or SEC college football. And so 100,000 people. Where else could you get 100,000 people driving to Bumblesquat, PA, to watch a football game?
Right,
I've been to Bumblesquat. It's nice. I got a Wawa. So.
They got several Wawas.
And the sheets.
Well, I mean, you could talk about the snowbird part of it. You can talk about how life is in Florida, life is in Arizona. Arizona, especially on their sporting side of things, is going to be adjusting a little bit with the announcement that Deandre Hopkins will be missing almost an entire half of the season because of PED usage. He's shocked. He's surprised. My question for both of you right off the bat, do you think it's legit? Do you think it's fake? And do you think he knew about it?
The Cardinals clearly knew about it, which is why they traded for Hollywood Brown during the draft the other night.
Yeah, this is from November, so he's done his behind the scenes appeals already, and yes, they knew about it. I think, to your question, Scott, I have a different question. As far as I know, I don't think, I'm not sure who has been popped, who's in the Hall of Fame in the NFL, but I don't see how you're going to keep this guy out of the Hall of Fame, even with this, which just goes to show you the difference in the sports. Do I think it was? Do I think he knew he did it? Yes, I think he had a major injury. He was trying to come back from a major injury and was using PADs not medically, legitimately not. It's not legitimate because it's not quite legal, but I don't think he was using it to quite gain an edge, but to heal up, to be ready for the season, to be ready to rock and roll come, opening day. And he got popped. And I think he's like, well, okay, I got popped. I can't do them. I'm going to need another 6 weeks to heal anyway, which is probably why he's not appealing it. He won't be ready because now he has to be off the PEDs.
Yeah, Robinson Cano, you could say, essentially did the same thing. That's the only reason why he was even set foot on a major league field, because when he's not on PEDs, he stinks and isn't a major league player. So it's the same kind of thing as far as injury recovery, not necessarily trying to lap the competition, but also, as you said, the difference between the two sports. Somebody gets popped for steroids in baseball, it's a travesty. In football, no big deal. It's part of the game. It's just the difference in the weird fan mystique of both sports playing against each other.
I also think that this becomes a huge opportunity for the Green Bay Packers. I think that this is a team that's got to feel, even with what it's got right now, it's going to the playoffs. But boy, having a stud wide receiver would make all the difference in the world. Whereas if you're Arizona, I don't know if you're positive you're going to make the playoffs if you're starting 6 games without him.
Not in that division.
Year, not in that division. They were 2-6 last year without him. Now they're going to be 2-4 again. If he comes back in 6 weeks, if you can get something for him to give you just a little more of an edge now from Green Bay, I don't know what that would be. I think you have to look to make that trade with the Packers now. That's just my thought. And then you can try to bring in OBJ when OBJ isn't hurt anymore if you're still in the race.
And the Packers also play in the NFC North division is kind of a joke right now. Minnesota can't get out of their own way. Chicago,
the Bears and Lions are a mess.
Yeah, Chicago is a joke, and the Lions are the Lions as they've been for decades. So they'll
be the Lions with a pass rush this year.
Right, so they might win 5 games instead of 2 or 3. But
no, they might bother some quarterbacks for a quarter. That's all.
Yeah, but but it's Packers by default in that division, whereas the NFC West is one of the toughest divisions in football. So the Cardinals with the defending Super Bowl champs and the team that went to the NFC Championship game, and a team that is attempting to rebuild in Seattle, the Cardinals have tough competition. They could be 2-4 and buried before Hopkins even gets back from the suspension. Yeah. Which will start the Kyler Murray grievances, and
I was about to go with this. Yeah,
that could go south very quickly.
Yeah, and as far as Kyler Murray goes, obviously he's already not happy in Arizona anyway. This is only going to add fuel to that absolute fire, and he's going to want out, and he's going to be vocal as much as especially if that team starts out 0-4, 1-5, something like that.
Yeah, but I don't think. First of all, this year it's going to be very interesting on great quarterbacks and wide receivers are going to get some interesting looks this year, because what were you last year with another guy? And what are you this year? Like, people are really going to get a sense of, does the quarterback make the wide receiver? There's at least 3-4 guys that now we're going to see under different circumstances. What are they like? What does that mean? And, if it turns out that it's the quarterback and not the wide receiver, if that seems to sort of be like, somebody blows up in Green Bay and Mecole Hardman turns into what everybody wanted them to be, and A.J. Brown turns into just another guy that Hurts is throwing to, people are going to look at a 1-5 Kyler Murray and say, really? Okay, maybe you're just Baker Mayfield. Like you just can't get it done. And so I don't think that him being angry about anything's going to help, because I think he's got to ball out or just be that cute little guy who plays in Arizona. Like, he's got to ball out. No one's going to accept, I think, that it's, Nook isn't there. Like, they're not going to accept that storyline. That's my guess. JD, you got an opinion on that?
Murray also doesn't have the leverage that he thinks he does. He has 2 more years on this deal with the Cardinals picking up the no-brainer option. And then then he could be franchise tagged after that, just like Dak and Cousins were. But at this point, Kyler Murray, put up or shut up. Either go on the field, or if you really feel that disrespected, go play baseball. Go back and play for that pathetic Oakland A's team, because he can if he wants to. So if you really want it that bad, or really want Arizona that bad, go play baseball. Have fun.
You know what? If he played with the Oakland A's,
shut up and take the money that you have, because the option year will pay him in the lines of about 10, 20 million, probably about 20, closer to 20 million, I think, at his rate at the number 1 pick.
2 things about Murray in this case. 1, if he did go back to Oakland, their ticket sales will go up. He would be a draw. That would actually help the team as ticket sales. I don't think anybody can argue that.
Yeah, they go from 2,000 to 4,000.
Hey, they can brag on a marketing standpoint. We doubled our ticket sales by adding Kyler Murray to the Oakland A's. Think about that kind of input. But also at the same time, as far as Kyler Murray goes, he has shot himself in the foot so badly and gone to such a diva attitude that it's going to kill him in future contracts, because teams are not going to want to have to deal with that for the numbers he's putting up.
Watch what happens.
And the injuries, too. What's that?
Watch what happens with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore this year, because however that goes down, that will be the template for what Arizona does with Murray next year.
I'm going to make a sharp left-hand turn. I apologize, but we were talking about divas, and we're talking about quarterbacks. And Scott, you have taught me to look at sports athletes in commercials differently than I had in the past. Right?
I burned and spoiled you.
Well, Gronk is, like, as you put, Gronk is truly just reading off a teleprompter, and then you get different levels until you get all the way out to our boy Baker, who's actually acting. Have you seen the new Damian Lillard commercial?
I have not.
I haven't.
It's a Gatorade commercial. He actually is boxing in the commercial. So I know he's not actually getting hit, but he is doing some boxing, throwing some punches, as well as some other things. When you get a look at that commercial, I'll expect a message on our chats. Go look for it. Damian Lillard Gatorade.
For what it's worth, Portland is very done playing right now. So
yes, they are.
It's not like he's trying to do this during the season.
That's fair. The only thing I'll say in this case here is, without having seen it, obviously they have to dedicate days to fight choreography rehearsals. They ad-lib something like that. They have to make sure that nobody gets hit. There's stunt coordinators involved. He has to be trained specifically to have the rhythmic movements that you would have. It's like a dance. It really is. Fight choreography is literally just a dance and nothing else. But all right, we got about 5 minutes left, so I want to break this down right now from the perspective of an Eagles fan, a Jets fan, and a Giants fan. Starting with the Eagles fan, are you happy with the NFL draft this year?
I am very happy with the NFL draft this year, but I feel like many people are overgrading the Eagles or overreaching on how good the Eagles are going to be versus the Cowboys. This is still the NFL, and I still think it's a quarterback-driven league, and I don't think Hurts is in the same category as Dak Prescott. I think they're clearly better than the Giants and the football team, and the draft really is the reason they are. And speaking of the Giants, Scott.
All right, I guess I'll go next. Listen, honestly, I have this weird feeling. We got about 5 minutes left. It's weird in Giant Nation, because we've been a laughing stock and a perennial failure for the last 10 years after the Super Bowl. And I am well aware that Jet Nation is like, yeah, we've had it worse. And I don't argue that. But there is a certain mental oh God, I hate to say the word. It's going to sound dickish. Prestige to being Giant Nation because of the history of the team, the success.
It's called arrogance, Scott.
Yeah, okay, that's arrogance is a better word and probably cleaner for the FCC than what I just fired out. But I meant private investigator, nothing else. But in this case here, after everything that happened last year, it's weird seeing Buffalo Giants now because you got, Buffalo GM, Buffalo head coach. And so far in this draft, offense, defense, he went right at it. And he suddenly gave this team hope and excitement again. Between Thibodeau, between Evan Neal, the fan base is like, we see the future and it doesn't suck. It'll take a couple years, but it's not bad. JD?
I mean, you're right on the Giants. They had a lot of holes to fill. What's even weirder still is seeing the Jets being the team mentioned as the team that won the draft. And they picked up possibly from their first round picks over the past 2 years, they have 5 starters, probably 6 if you count Breece Hall in the second round. They got players at 4 positions who, on some teams' boards, were number 1 or number 2 at those positions. Breece Hall was the first running back on the board. The first running back taken in the draft. The Jets got him in the second round. Johnson slid, so the Jets traded up and got him. And then at the top of the draft at 4 and 10, you had Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. When the Wilson pick that was the first wide receiver that the Jets have taken in the first round since Santana Moss over 20 years ago. Combined with the picks from last year of Zach Wilson and Vera Tucker for the offensive line, you do see a bit of hope. The draft is the point, the one time that you actually see a bit of hope as a Jets fan, and it seems legitimate. Usually it comes crashing down hard once the games actually start, and I expect no difference this year. But even if they get 6 or 7 wins, that's all it takes for the Jets, and probably the Giants too. Where just these teams have been the worst teams in football since 2017, and just some kind of progress is all it takes this year to actually get fans to think, all right, maybe there is something here. The Eagles accidentally made the playoffs last year. And so there's hope to build on there, to see, is Hurts a legitimate NFL quarterback when he actually has weapons? Can with the Eagles defense coming better? So there might actually be something there. There's hope for all 3 of our teams. Obi, you had another thought about the Eagles?
Yeah.
Well, no, I do not have. I was going to say that yes, there's still hope, and I still think the Eagles are a legit shot at wild card. But I just wanted to say one thing about the Jets that was just mind-boggling to me. As we all know, I am a huge dynasty fantasy football fan, and we draft rookies in dynasty fantasy football, and the majority of people's fantasy football board prior to the draft was number 1 Breece Hall, number 2 Garrett Wilson. And the majority of people did not come off of that. It was just such a shocking win for the Jets from just the perspective of who were people looking at in that community, that I do think that they won the draft entirely. I think the one team that we did not talk about, though, that needs a little bit of props, and so I'll say their name, is the Baltimore Ravens. Even if they did make Lamar unhappy, I think it was all the right moves with what they walked away with.
I still think they let Lamar go next year.
Could be right.
I think you'll find he's especially after the injuries last year. I would not be surprised if they just let him go and then draft another quarterback next year. That has been floated as a possibility. If there's any team that actually would have the stones to pull the trigger and do that, I could see it being the Ravens.
Well, they have the coaching staff and the GM staff who has proven it, so they'd get some leeway to try it for a year or two with the new quarterback.
And push comes to shove, the Denver Broncos. So, all right, we got to wrap this up at this point. Thank you again, as always, Mr. Obie Spencer, Mr. JD Walker. 7 o'clock tonight on Tales from the Film Set, we will be breaking down the announcements made at CinemaCon, including Bad Bunny entering the Spider-Verse as El Muerto. Plus, also, I'm going to be talking about some of the weirdest, dumbest, and most bizarre casting notices I've ever gotten. Hint, they're mostly from reality shows. Anyway, I'm Scott Churchson, Mr. Obie Spencer. Thank you. Mr. JD Walker, thank you. And thank you guys. Appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Take care. Have a great day. Stay groovy.